welcome to Pitch Report. I'm Mario.
I'm Amilcar.
How are you doing today, Amilcar?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
Doing well. Very excited for the episode today. I think it'll be a fun one.
I know, big 2026 now.
2026. So we are officially done with the first quarter of this century. So Amilcar and I were thinking that it would be fun if we did a look back at the many, many moments that soccer has gifted us in the last 25 years. And we pick what, in our opinion, are the 25 biggest, best moments of the last 25 years. Amilcar, do you want to kind of say like what our criteria was for this
Yeah,
list?
honestly, I don't even know that we had our criteria. It was kind of like whatever we thought. So I'm sure I think we should just do a disclaimer. There's probably stuff that we missed that we just didn't think of. By no means does that mean that we don't think it's important. We just didn't think of it when we made the list. So yeah, I think there's probably some biases in there as well, as we had mentioned. But no, I think it's what we thought were historical moments. Some of them are like, I think like maybe like time periods. Some of them are singular events. So there wasn't like a ton of criteria. It was just what we thought was the most important. And I think some of them are like what we thought was the most impactful as well. Might not be the biggest moment, but it was super impactful for not just like that time, but like maybe how football's played like going forward. So
Yeah, we got a healthy mix of different things. And yeah, definitely a little bit of bias perhaps. Yeah. I think with that, we can probably maybe give a few shout outs to our honorable mentions. We had many when we were compiling the list. There's two that we are going to share. Mocha, you want to take the first one?
Yeah, so the first one was just outside of the scope. So I don't know if we mentioned it, but it was the top 25 moments in the last 25 years. So the first quarter, yes. If we didn't already mention it, because my memory's going. So these are like the 99ers. So on the left side, it's the USA women's national team. This goal to me was just like an iconic, something like that's iconic that I think whenever I think of women's soccer, I think of this goal or like this photo more specifically. It was like the first time that like a woman really took her shirt off after scoring, and I don't know, it's kind of like it was very impressive. And then on the right side, it's the purchase of Wrexham by celebrities, which we thought was kind of, or they were the like first movers to celebs buying into soccer teams, or just I think sports teams in general. Now I think we can probably say like out of the EPL, half the teams are owned by Americans, and like half of those they have some sort of investors that are all celebrities.
Yeah, and I think this is a very interesting story because it's still ongoing, and maybe if we did this list in like a year or so, like Wrexham could actually move up to the Premier League next year, which would be 4 consecutive promotions. Just a few weeks ago, it looked like there was no chance, but right now they're pretty close to the championship playoffs. So it would just be a very impressive feat to be performed if they pull it off. So yeah, we had many honorable mentions, and something we maybe didn't mention, there is a video component to this episode. So we have pictures for basically every event that we're going to mention. You don't really need it for the episode, but to get the full experience, we will have a link to our YouTube channel on the episode description wherever you're watching this podcast. But with that, drum roll, we can get going to the 25 biggest moments in soccer according to Pitch Report. So we got number 25, the pro debut of Cristiano Ronaldo. I think if you've been on Earth in the last 25 years, you probably know who this person is. He debuted in 2002 for Sporting Lisbon. And in theory, that moment wasn't like necessarily special. It's when any other like prospect makes a debut. But what it would come to mean for the next 25 years, like, one, he's still playing and he's dominated basically even now to this day, him with another person. Like, the conversation when it comes to soccer. There's not a lot of soccer shows that you might listen to that his name doesn't get brought up at least once.
Yeah, I'm
So
glad you didn't use the other name that we shall not mention when we're on this slide. But yeah, I think this is a perfect example of something that maybe at the moment wasn't super crazy, but going back and seeing it now, it's like probably arguably one of the biggest debuts just because it's one of the best footballers of all time. I mean, I don't know. It's just crazy to think that like this kid's like rewrote the history books, all the record books. And just like you mentioned, I think the longevity is also a big thing. I think that's something that's talked about with him, talked about with like LeBron James, Tiger Woods. Like there's a couple of names that you see that have so many records, and a lot of them are just longevity records. So yeah, I mean, this one had to make the list just because of the significance of being arguably one of the greatest players to ever play the game, and hopefully a future World Cup winner.
yeah, the story's still being written professionally.
Exactly. And he's done crazy stuff. I think we said been successful in the Portuguese league, been successful in the EPL, La Liga, Italy, and then now in Saudi. I think what France and Germany are the only leagues that he never really played in,
Yeah,
which is
basically.
pretty impressive.
Yeah.
All right, and we had to. I just realized that we put Messi above Ronaldo. Man, how did I let you get away with this?
I I mean, I personally think I prefer Ronaldo slightly more to Messi. However, the reason I think he's one higher than us, this is number 24 by the way, is because the event is Messi making his pro debut 2 years after Ronaldo in 2004. And I think at the moment the reason we have him right now is because he's won a World Cup. But up until like that World Cup win, I think the argument was a pretty even, and I think it's become a little bit more lopsided since Messi won the World Cup. So I think this is reflective of that.
Fair enough. I'll give it to you. But yeah, this is a similar situation, I think, to Ronaldo, right? The debut itself, it wasn't one of the biggest ones. I don't really remember it, to be honest with you, but of both these debuts, it wasn't like one of these players that was highly touted, was being watched for, ever, and, was like expected to be a huge star. I think they were like good players, but they weren't like, I guess, what you see. Like I think when I think of that, I think of like Freddie Adu. Remember him
Yeah.
from MLS. Like before he made his MLS debut, he was gonna be like the next wonder kid that everyone thought was gonna be like put the U.S. on the map, or yeah, I think the U.S.
Yeah.
So it was just like a normal player, and then now looking back, it's kind of crazy. For him, the impressive part was like he played most of his career in Spain. I think he was played, but like in the
Like
lower
since he
ranking.
was
Sorry.
like 13, he played in like Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's one of the unique situations where he was actually able to sign with Barcelona early because his whole family moved and everything like that. Now we know you have to be 18 in order to be signed by a lot of these, European teams. But yeah, I mean, same thing. Rewrote the history books. Is still rewriting the history
Yeah.
books and doing some pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of indicative too of what the conversation has been. You can't really talk a lot about Ronaldo without talking about Messi and vice versa. So they're kind of like I don't know, Batman and the Joker. Like it's better when you have two, and we've just been very lucky to have two really good players. And I would say like from prospects, Messi was probably a slightly more highly regarded prospect than Ronaldo in terms of initially, but like they were both just like, yeah, you couldn't have been like, oh, that person's gonna be the GOAT. Like we've said so many times, like there's been a lot of people compared to like a Ronaldo or Messi, and they've been very good, but just these two players have been at another stratosphere than anyone else. So it's just been very, very cool to have arguably the two best players, at least in the last 25 years, maybe of all time, playing and for like the amount of time that they've played as well.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting because I feel like if it wasn't for Ronaldo, Messi wouldn't be as good, and if it wasn't for Messi, Ronaldo wouldn't be as good. And that's why I really love that they both played in Spain because they were able to like push
Yeah.
themselves to be better than the other. Because I think regardless of what everyone says, I think they obviously see the competition, right? So they're going to try to just level each other up. So I think they just use it to push themselves. And I do also find it interesting because I think there's a lot of sports where we see like what you can call like the quote unquote goats, like either are active right now or have just recently retired, which makes me think like, does everyone just continue leveling up? So like, is there going to be a player in 5-10 years where it's like, oh, these guys are the goats, like they're better than Messi and Ronaldo? And I'm just thinking of like Kobe, LeBron, like Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, like all those guys are the goats of the sport, and they've all played in the last 20 years.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's dependent on, there might be a recency bias. I feel like sometimes you talk to older people and they're like, no, Maradona was even better. I also think we're in a modern age of sports where we've nailed a lot of human performance factors to a science. So I'm curious. And I think right now you can back up a lot of like the players you mentioned with stats, like Messi, Ronaldo. They're all-time leaders in many categories. Same for LeBron, Djokovic, most like Grand Slams. A lot of these players have the stats to back it up. So I will be curious if like younger players eventually pass all those stats, which records are meant to be broken. And who knows, the way like technology is advancing, there might be like the next time we do this in 25 years, like, oh, the human hacking era where like now people are playing with like, I don't know, they've said you like can genetically modify people now. So are we going to have like a, like, oh, this is pre modification or whatever, where like people are like just like doing insane records where like it's normal to score 50 goals a season or whatnot. We'll see. I think it's a good indicator of the times though.
Yeah, and I think kind of like I had just mentioned, I think longevity is going to be the big one. I think right now we're saying, oh, Ronaldo and Messi playing into their 40s is unheard of. I think there's going to be players playing into the late 40s, 50s, maybe in 20, 30 years, who knows? And all these records are just going to be shattered, So then it's going to be really interesting to think like, do you separate it by eras, right? Do we separate like the, Pele era, the Maradona era, the Ronaldo, Zidane, or Ronaldo, and Messi era? Like, there's so many people in there, but we'll see how it all ends up panning out in 20, 30 more years, and see if it, like you said, if it's just recency bias or if there actually is just like massive improvements in talent.
Yeah. Well, we will see. But for the meantime, we will move on to number 23, which is dun, 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 Neymar's transfer to PSG for $222 million. We put this on because it was a, why did we put this on? We put this.
Yeah,
Sorry, we made the list a few weeks ago
no, you're
during
good.
the
I think this one was
holiday.
one of my suggestions too. The reason I think that this was a pivotal moment in the last 25 years is because I think Neymar was the first, or not even Neymar, this transfer was the first one to really just break the bank completely, and also like bring in, I mean, we're going to talk about it, but like bring in foreign money, right? But this is was the start of big money transfers. Now, if we say 150, 200 million, we kind of say like, okay, yeah, maybe it'll happen. It kind of like those numbers are spoken about. Before this, I think it was what Ronaldo was probably the one. I don't know if this, yeah, or Bale, which was like 100 million,
Yeah,
and usually 100 was like you're the world class, probably arguably one of the best players in the world at this moment, and PSG just came and just blew that out of the water. And obviously, I think this one very well. It was the reason it's 222 million was because that was his buyout clause, right? To be able to be bought out, and that was the first and I think probably only time that one of these big name players has been actually been able to buy out. Now most of the buyout clauses are like $1 billion, which is like
yeah,
a figurative number that we think we should say no one's ever going to get to, right?
exactly. Yeah, we say that now, but like we said, the records are meant to be broken. And yeah, now, yeah, you definitely see players getting like north of 200 million. Where before, now it's like its own tier where, yeah, very elite players might get it, but before it was like just not a thing.
Yeah, and I think it's just crazy how that transfer was able to happen. It didn't pan out, I think, how everyone thought it was.
Yeah.
But this is also the beginning of PSG. I would say the PSG's reign that now they won the EPL, the Champions League as well.
Yeah, it took them another third. How many years ago? Was it like 10 years ago? No, like 12 years ago.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so they got the Champions League, but this was like when they really started to want it.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to number 22, South Korea becomes a World Cup semifinalist. So this was back in 2002. They were co-hosts for the World Cup with Japan. Uh, this was like a true like Cinderella story, the type that you kind of see like in March Madness, um, where World Cup hosts tend to historically do better than they usually do in World Cups. But this was quite a feat. They became the first Asian country to do this. They upset Italy, I believe Senegal as well. They like en route to the final or to the semifinal. They beat a lot of like really amazing teams. And one of my favorite aspects of these types of runs is like how it can excite a country, like just and you see like I love seeing on TV everyone just getting so into it, and it's like a very cool cultural experience where if you're living in the city in the country when this is happening, that's like something you tend to remember. And I think it was a departure from like maybe just being a few South American and European teams in the semifinals, and it was kind of like I think the first step in a more competitive global soccer like stage, which now we see a lot more teams that are contenders. Um, Unfortunately, they have been the last Asian team to be a semifinalist, but it was definitely like a big thing for just soccer in Asia in general.
Yeah, I think this was a huge moment. I think this is the first World Cup that I like actually remember watching. It was the
Me
Korea
too. Yeah,
Japan
it was like
World Cup.
3 a.m. like crazy
Yeah,
game times.
I remember waking up super early to watch Spain play and stuff like that. And so I think to me that's what this brings back is like kind of my earlier memories of watching soccer and in the world stage at least. But the big thing here was that they were not a highly ranked team, right? And like you said,
Yeah,
the hosts generally do a little bit better. So fingers crossed for Canada, the US, and Mexico
yeah,
this year that hopefully they'll be able to kind of carry on that torch and do well. But even then, I mean, getting to the semifinals is a feat way past even just like home field advantage, right? Like you usually see the home field advantage for like lower tier countries. Maybe it gets you a couple of wins in the group stage. Maybe you get out of the group stage, right? But they got out of the group stage and won two more games after that.
yeah,
So really impressive, and yeah, very very worthy of 22.
yeah. Very, very impressive. And I will say 2002, shout out Jared Borghetti. He's got one of like my favorite Mexico goals. It was against Italy. Super nice goal. You haven't seen it or haven't seen it recently, go check it out. It's a cross by Cuauhtemoc Blanco, and then he headers it in and just leaves Buffon stunned. Very cool.
Man, haven't heard those names in a while.
I know. All right, moving on to number 21.
All right.
Case.
So
Okay, go for it. Sorry.
right.
No, it's all you.
I'll intro this one.
Okay.
All right. So for number 21, we have the Kansas City Current getting their own stadium. So this was, while maybe not what you would say like at the caliber, quote unquote, of some of the other things we have on the list, I think this is maybe going forward something that is unprecedented, unforeseen, and will kind of change the way women's sports, not even just women's sports, but women's soccer specifically. So the Kansas City Current is actually the NWSL team for women's soccer in Kansas City, and they're the first team I think in the world to have their own stadium. The first women's soccer team to have their own stadium. So we think this was like a very pivotal thing, and going forward, it's really going to solidify women's sports and just like the NWSL specifically, which is awesome that the U.S. is leading that charge.
Absolutely, and we have seen like women's soccer in the U.S. be like lead a lot of progress in the sport, and I think this is also one of the events similar to like Messi or Ronaldo making their pro debut, which is significant. This is like more significant at the moment that it happened, but I think what it means for the future as well, for the long term aspect of the game, where this is something like soccer. These teams are still businesses, and now this is seen as a very viable business to be in, and it's one that makes sense for a lot of cities and a lot of teams. So it's very exciting, and I hope we continue to see more of this. And it's a beautiful stadium. It looks like I have never been to Kansas City, but it looks like it's on a river, so it looks really nice. With that, we can move on to number 20, which very similar to number 22, but this is Morocco being a World Cup semifinalist. And we saw this at the most recent edition of the World Cup. And they were not hosts. They will be in 2030, along with Spain. Is that correct? Yeah, it's along with Spain, right?
Spain and Portugal.
And Portugal, yes. But yeah, Morocco, I would say were probably ranked higher than South Korea in the tournament. And especially if you see on paper the players that they have, they had an amazing team. But it was very cool. It's the first African country to make it to a World Cup semifinal, so very similar to the South Korea stat at that point in time. And I think, which might have been the sentiment when South Korea did it, but I think it's a sign of more things to come for Africa in general. There's some amazing talent. And I really, if I had to, at this point in time, we've seen basically Europe and South America win World Cups. If I had to pick the next continent to produce a World Cup winner, I would say at this point in time, it's probably Africa. And not just because of the World Cup like semifinal run from Morocco, but the depth of talent that there is throughout AFCON. But that's, I guess, a little getting off topic. But back to this point, they actually ended up beating their neighbors to the north, both Spain and Portugal, en route to the semifinal. So it was a pretty cool moment. One of probably like my favorite storylines from that World Cup.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I think this is also significant because I think it's the rise of like African nations and doing really well in global competition. Even just seeing like the AFCON right now, how much publicity it's getting, right? It's going on currently as we speak. But one thing that I think is also super impressive from this team is that most of these players weren't born in Morocco, but they come from Moroccan descendants, right? So a lot of them are French or Spanish or born in different European countries to parents, Moroccan parents. And I think that this is also something that we've seen maybe in the last 3 or 4 years, people starting to represent like their heritage, which I think is such an awesome thing. So many players that could have played for France or could have played for Spain or England, you're starting to see them kind of go to like their roots or like their heritage and playing for African teams. I always remember seeing like the French team, and then you realize that there's only like two people that are actually like French when you talk about like heritage, like their parents are French. The rest of them are mostly from African countries. So I think that's probably why you have that sentiment of Africa being the next nation or next continent to potentially bring in the World Cup. But I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah, like I believe Captain Hakimi, he was born in Madrid. He could have actually played for Spain, and he ended up eliminating him from the World Cup instead.
And Brahim also played for Spain. I think the Euros like didn't really play much, or if at all, and then he decided to represent Morocco. So, and he's I think the highest goal scorer right now in AFCON. So that's awesome, man. I mean, I would love for both of those players to play for Spain, but I think when we're talking about the greater scheme of what it means to the world, I think it's an awesome thing.
Yeah, and we recently did our jerseys episode, but the jersey for this Morocco team I really like too. I'll be interested to see what they come out with from Puma for this upcoming World Cup. But on to number 19.
All right, so another big transfer. This one is Ronaldo transferring to Al Nassr for a $200 million salary. Now, it wasn't a big transfer dollar amount, but the salaries. The reason I think or we thought that this was a pivotal moment in history or in soccer, is because this is the start of these like what I would call outrageous salaries in world soccer, but also more specifically in Saudi Arabia or in I guess in Saudi Arabia and around there. $200 million salary is unheard of per year. You know,
Yeah.
he's signing almost $1 billion contract, which is, you know, generational money. But yeah, this is for the first time we saw this, and then now we've seen various players, whether people like it or not. Started with like more older players, and now it's starting to get kind of more of like the younger players, maybe players in their prime now. Obviously heard mixed reviews, seen mixed reviews. Some players go there, they love it. Some players go for a year and they're like, get me back to, you know, Europe. So, but regardless if you like it or not, I think this is like a pivotal change in soccer.
Yeah, absolutely. And for reference, this was in January 2023. We didn't put it in the graphic on that one, but I also, it kind of reminds me of uh, when David Beckham came to the U.S., where I I didn't know anything about the Saudi league until this moment happened. If you would have asked me, does Saudi Arabia have a soccer league, I would have guessed maybe. I couldn't have given you a definitive yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that you can't go now to a soccer store and not see an Al Nassr jersey, and it kind of opened the floodgates for a lot of other like European players, European based players, to go play there. So I think it's kind of had the similar effect like as David Beckham had for MLS, although these players are getting paid a lot more.
A lot
Yeah,
more.
yeah, a lot more. And to Ronaldo's credit, when I heard that, I was like, oh, he's washed, he's done, and he's kind of proved at least he's still playing well, like in general. So credit to him too.
No, completely. And this, I think that conversation kind of segues into number 18 that we have. And that is Abu Dhabi Investment or United Group buying Man
Yeah,
City. So I think this one was the first kind of Saudi Arabian company to purchase a soccer team. This happened in 2008. They purchased it and obviously pumped a ton of money into the team. Man City was middle of the pack, if not more mediocre team historically, and since then I think has completely turned the tides. Obviously they've won a handful of EPLs. I don't think they won a champ. No, they won
yeah,
one Champions
yeah,
League.
they
Yeah,
did.
one Champions League finally.
Yeah,
And yeah, similar to now PSG's owned by Saudi. Newcastle kind of started you know, the Saudi money in soccer teams.
yeah. This was, we've kind of like talked about. You can kind of see like the pattern, and you see like in the different events, and we've talked about different like groups, especially like oil rich countries investing in these teams, and it's completely changed the structure. It's made teams that were irrelevant at a point in time just into powerhouses. Man City's dominated the Premier League. PSG, like literally, I didn't even know that PSG had been that bad before. They were pretty like irrelevant. I think they'd won League One before, and now they basically win it almost every year, with the exception of maybe twice in like the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, like showed like, or it was a big change, especially for Man City. They got a new stadium, they got new jerseys, new sponsors, the players that they play for now. It Yeah, I feel like if you like, I don't know, we're in a coma in like 1990 and wake up in 2025, 2026, and you see this about Manchester City, you'd be like, what? Really? Like,
Yeah, I was thinking like the kids will never know, you know,
yeah,
like
the kids,
how it
yeah,
was like.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, before there was like one big Manchester team, and that was Manchester United, and now like, as they say in The Office, how the turntables.
I wonder if that actually like ends up affecting the fans. I wonder if there's maybe like younger fans that are Man City fans versus Man United. Um, Granted, I think maybe I'm like convincing myself right now that maybe
Yeah,
that's not the case, because I was like, I think soccer in Europe is more like who your family is going for or who your parents like
Yeah.
rooted for, and that's kind of who you end up rooting for. So maybe that's not actually the case. I feel like if the father is a Man United fan, then the kid is going to be a Man United fan, at least generally.
Yeah, I think if you're based like in those countries or have roots to them, but a lot of fans that don't, like myself included, for example, like you kind of pick a team for a reason. Maybe someone you know. Or with me, it was kind of Manchester United was good at the time when I started like watching a little bit more Premier League soccer, and then they got Chicharito, so that was like, yeah, it's Manchester United for me.
Mario, the
So
apple fell very far from the tree. Your dad's a huge Real Madrid fan.
no, I'm talking Premier League.
But I mean, in terms of like of you following
Oh,
the teams your dad likes.
yeah, well, that's the exception. But at the time, Rafa Marquez was at Barcelona, so that's
Different reason.
yeah. We both like Chivas though, so yeah, we have
Can be
a few
perfect,
different.
right?
Yeah, exactly. He can't because I like Barcelona. All
Oh
right,
man.
but moving on. Oh, this is a fun one.
Wow. All right. So this is number 17. This is something also crazy remembering. Zidane headbutting in the 2006 final,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, the final against Italy, the World Cup final against Italy. Um, I'd venture to say that when you think of the 2006 World Cup, you think, I mean, a lot of people probably think France won this World Cup just because of this headbutt. I think most
yeah,
people, this is like the first thing people think about when they think of the '06 World Cup. Zidane headbutting the final, getting a straight red card, and then the game completely changing, right? And
yeah,
then obviously we know that Italy ended up winning that. But outside of this headbutt, Zidane had an insane World Cup
yeah.
of during this, anyways. But I mean, there's stories about what the player said, didn't say, about his family or not, whatever that is. But the headbutt is also interesting because it's like that's maybe not what I would think of doing. Maybe like punching
Yeah.
him or like kicking him or something. But like the headbutt is so interesting. Like I wonder what he thought. Like why did he go for the headbutt? You know?
Yeah, I don't know, but it looks like he got some good contact. That if you're looking at the picture we have, you could tell like his back foot. He had like a lot of leverage going
There's no
into
flopping
it.
here.
Yeah, no flop. Yeah, you're not flopping. Yeah, I would even be concerned of like the like what's it called, the bone in the chest, the femur. Like he
No,
broke.
femur's in your leg, but
Oh, sorry, Doctor T. Sorry.
oh Mario, you should have just not even used the word. You're like, oh, you know,
Yeah,
I think it's called like your sternum or your
yeah.
chest bone.
Okay, yeah, we'll just keep bone in the chest area. Yeah,
We'll stick to our expertise, Mario.
yeah,
There's not an anatomy podcast, thankfully.
yeah. But it just looked like very painful. And we talked about how 2002 was the first podcast or the first World Cup that we remember. I just remember it vaguely because like my dad would stay up late. But this is one I actually remember watching and knowing more what was going on. And I was like just shook when this happened. It was insane. I think this might be our single biggest like moment in the list because everything else had maybe more that happened before, leading up to it, or after the fact. This was just like an enormous moment. It was also Zidane's last professional game, which that always made me sad because I just feel like he had so much more in the tank still. He had been like, even there was like reports of him when he was the coach at Real Madrid that sometimes he would like go like play with the players and that he was the best one when he would like go play with them like during practice and scrimmages. So yeah, it was like an interesting way to end the career. But yeah, he scored an amazing penalty against Buffon in that final. I think he's one of few players to score in two World Cup finals.
That's the one that it hit like the top and then went in, but like this
Yeah,
before like VAR and all that stuff,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. But it was actually in the replay. You can clearly see it
Yeah.
bounces in and then out. But yeah, talk about like ice cold. Like this guy, yeah, he's something else.
I think also I think a lot of people don't. I think he should be a lot higher up on people's lists of best players like to
Yeah,
play. And a lot of people don't think that, maybe because like his career was cut short, not cut short, but I like ended what we would say early.
yeah, 32 or 33.
Mhm.
He retired.
Yeah, and it wasn't because of injury; it was just because like he was just done. You know, he's done
Yeah,
playing and he moved on. But I think he's one of the players that I think when you see some videos of watching him play, it's like he's like pre-Ronaldinho, kind of like the way he played with the ball, and like Ronaldo. It's just impeccable to watch.
Yeah. And since we're on it, I just have actually, since we mentioned my dad in the previous one, my dad and I actually met Zidane separately in it was I think 2011. He was assistant coach to Real Madrid, and they were doing their summer tour. I feel like I maybe have shared this in the podcast before, but we were in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. We lived in San Diego, still do, I guess. And we were just visiting there because we had a family in town, and I'm with my cousin, and he's like, I think that's Zidane. And he was walking with like a posse, and we tried getting close to get a picture, and like his security was like, oh no, no pictures. Meanwhile, my dad like had dropped us off right in front of like the Chinese theater. And he had gone to park the car a few blocks away. So when I finally run into my dad, he's like, I just ran into Zidane. And since when he saw him, there was like significantly less people. He actually got a like selfie with them.
That's so awesome.
And my dad said he told them when they were taking the pictures, like, hey, but don't headbutt me.
Knowing your dad, I'm also not surprised. That's hilarious.
Yeah. He said he laughed.
Your dad's just very charismatic, you know? So, like, he's probably like, oh, this guy's not serious.
Yeah, or bold, but yeah.
Wait, that's an awesome story, man. Honestly. Yeah.
All right, and then we're going to round up this section of the top 25 with number 16.
All right, Portugal winning the Euros in 2016. This is what people said Ronaldo needed until Messi got the World Cup, and now it's, you know, he needs a World Cup, you know. But this is an awesome game. He got injured at the end of this match, and there's so many videos of him essentially running up and down the sidelines, coaching more than the coach was coaching. But this was like the cherry on top for what he had done that year and for the last handful of years, and the first international trophy for Portugal, and then for Ronaldo as well. So before, I think a lot of people don't realize that before Ronaldo played for Portugal, they didn't really get to quarters, semis of Euros, World Cups. Like they're barely kind of group stage and out kind of team, and he single-handedly / with, you know, a lot of other players now is a pretty consistent quarters and above is the bare minimum you're expecting from him. So the fact that this is the first Portuguese national trophy and Ronaldo's first national trophy, I think that was super impressive.
Yeah, it was like a true like underdog story. They beat France. I was hosting the World Cup. France was like stacked. They would go on to win the World Cup in a very dominant fashion 2 years later. So it was just really like a really cool like underdog story. I remember watching this game, and when he got hurt, I'm like, oh, they're done. Like, no way. Because basically he had kind of like in LeBron James fashion carried the team to the final. And I was like, yeah, there is no way. And like any like hero underdog movie, like the goal comes in extra time with Eder was a player. He's now retired. He really didn't have a very significant professional career. Really, this is by far like his biggest moment. But it's just it came from like a super unexpected guy when like you would have thought like Portugal wins the Euros 1-0. Who scores? Anyone would say like, oh, Ronaldo. So it was just very, very, very cool to see him get this big achievement. And
yeah, I think even for the final, he got injured like in the semis or in the quarters, and
it was during the final.
But like, he had played through it, and then
right,
he basically got injured in the final, and he just like sat. I remember like watching him sit down. And he's like crying. I'm just like, dude, this is rough.
Yeah, because even then you were already thinking like, oh, he's getting older because he's 41 now. I want to say or 4, so 30. So this was he's like
the
31.
Statement you're about to make is so crazy because you're about to say that people thought this was gonna be the last Euros, and here we are almost 10 years later saying that about him this World Cup, saying, oh, this is probably the last one now, you know?
Exactly, but it's true because not like 30, like how you play at 31, how you play at 35 is very different. That's usually like you might still be good to play professionally, but if you're in a competitive national team, which Portugal has definitely become, like you didn't know that for sure. So it just makes makes it like all in all like just more impressive. So I think this is a really good way to round up the first or the last 10 of our 25 most important things that have happened in soccer in the last 25 years. We will take a break here, and then you can catch the next episode where we're going to cover its numbers 15 through 6.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate being part of your day, talking soccer and hanging out. Don't forget to find us on Instagram and X at _pitch report. And I'm Amilcar.
And I'm Mario.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.